There is some doubt as to who the author of today's book even was. Most places seem to agree it may have been Elizabeth Waterhouse, but L.W. Curry notes the possibility of it being Emery Walker. The attribution to Edwin Waterhouse seems to be a typo. If we assume the first is correct, then Elizabeth Waterhouse was a British Quaker and writer mostly of religious works. She was born in 1834 in Tottenham, the daughter of John Hodgkin and Elizabeth Howard. She married the architect Alfred Waterhouse in 1860 and died in Reading, Berkshire in 1918. She wrote 2 works of fiction, both under the name E.W. The 1886 The Brotherhood of Rest, a 30-page story where nothing happens, and the 1887 The Island of Anarchy, a fragment of history in the 20th century, which we shall review today. What will strike you first is the book has the most ridiculously large margins I have ever seen, such that its 100 pages are in fact much less. The idea is that old people in office are inherently selfish and unwilling to undergo any radical reform. So a parliament of men solely in their 30s takes power in the UK, also gladly disposing of any female MPs, as the female author thinks women have no place in politics. They begin a project where criminals, even non-violent ones, get imprisoned in a convent to do penance before being humanely killed. The opponents of these decrees are literally and figuratively branded anarchists, then begin to be forcefully exiled from all British dominions under penalty of death if they would ever return. Note that the author agrees with all of this and presents this entirely positively. A previously submerged island rises above the waters, so all the anarchists, both real and those who assume the brand for the sake of compassion and principle, get exiled here not only from Britain but from all of Europe. They begin a pastoral existence under an unnamed scholar and several priests who build a small church. At the same time, there is a revolt in Ireland, predicted by the author by some 20 years only. She assumes eventually the Irish would revolt, only to almost immediately ask for a king from the ruling House of England. I burst out laughing at this, shall we call it naivety? So a bunch of Irishmen get shipped to the island, along with German and Russian nihilists, and immediately start trying to build pirate ships to raid nearby islands, and make war on their peaceful neighbours, ending up storming the church and burning it to the ground along with all inside, while the scholar gets murdered on its steps. And then they immediately stop wanting to do any violence whatsoever, for no stated reason, only for the Burmese government to unload a bunch of dacoits on the island to slaughter their way across it anyway. An exiled Russian nihilist prince would take up arms against them, but a fresh shipload of their dacoit friends threatens to wipe out the original inhabitants entirely, only to get sunk right off the coast. So the surviving dacoits are dropped off on a nearby island without ships. But then a random earthquake kills everyone but the Russian, who spends years alone on the island, before being picked up by a ship and dying before even getting to port. The writing is almost telegraphic in how it refuses to elaborate on interesting scenes, gives no real character interactions, and doesn't even bother to name a single character.